approach to getting people to research their family histories?
Well, I'm sorry I was late. I was trying to find the email and I did, but you know, I'm trying to use an approach to involve young people. And I just finished a book called The Comeback. And The Comeback is really a young people centered type of book. In fact, you might call it a comic book. I talked a little bit about it at Literati, and it's the story of an Italian-American family in modern times and some of the problems that they're facing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a different approach, and I realized that it might be an approach that is a little uncommon because we usually think of comic books as something silly, trivial, but you know, we have to kind of go where our young people are. And that's what I tried to do in this book. Is that what you're talking about, Don?
I thought you had an approach to genealogy, some kind of genealogical research.
Well, my family actually was from southern Italy. It was from Puglia. And when I first started writing, it was shortly after I went back to Puglia, where my family was part of my family was from Puglia, part of them was from northern Italy. And when I wrote Connected, A Homecoming, those were really stories of a generation. Today, you might use this term creative nonfiction, in the sense that I researched some of the problems in that area and some of the reasons why people left. And my family, on leaving there and coming to America, still remained very close to its Italian-American community here in the United States. The Italian-American community is very dear to me. And when I wrote Connected, it was really a love letter to those people, my grandparents' generation, my parents' generation, but it was also something that I'm beginning to get so concerned as to what I see in the media. And I thought, if I don't break my silence and start writing a little bit about my heritage in some way, then my voice and all the Italian-American voices from my grandparents' generation, my parents to this day, and how I try and influence my grandchildren, those voices are going to be drowned out.
Okay. I think our focus today is going to be a little bit more on the technical aspects of and resources for actually doing genealogy. Well,
I'd like to learn about that, Dominic.
Good. Angela, nice to see you.
Kathy, can you tell me what town your family came from in Puglia?
Well, yes, they came from Bari.
Yeah.
And a place probably does not even exist. I heard that it was covered by parking lots and stadiums. It was Carbonara.
Yeah. Uh-huh. I've got family from there myself.
Do you really?
My great grandmother's second husband was Palmo Abenanti, and he came from Carbonara.
Really? And have you been back there?
I was there in 2003, back when my job would give me enough time off to go to Italy. Mm-hmm. On my mother's father's side, they're from Triggiano, mm-hmm. and I've got buckets of DeNicolos in my family tree, probably from both towns at this point. So I'm probably your cousin somehow. We have to talk after the meeting.
Well, we'll have to do that. You know, when I was there, I tried to I tried to check in on one of the things that my mother wanted to do was to go back to, she wanted to go back to Carbonara and Puglia, and she wanted to see her cousin. She never made that. She never made that trip.
Mhm.
My mom died before we could do that. But I tried to contact my cousin, and I found that she wasn't living in Carbonara anymore. In fact, she was living in, they're living in Bari now. And
Yeah, I think Bari swallowed up Carbonara and Chegli and Lucetta. I think people, yes.
Yeah. So Dan is the most professional Italian American genealogist that I know of in our area, and he was a contributor to the Reconstructing Italians in Chicago. And times have changed uh, in the world of genealogy. They're with DNA testing and all that sort of thing. Uh, I found out that I'm related to my daughter through the DNA test. So it was really great news. But there have been some people who've been arrested for murder because of their DNA tests. So we'll hear a little bit more about that maybe. And the other advances, the progress in data gathering. And John Cavallone is with us too. John has done a lot of genealogy for his book that now included, segment is included in the new version of Reconstructing Italians in Chicago. So between the two of them, we've got a lot of expertise on and experience on genealogy. So we'll let Dan talk first, and we'll go from there.
All right. Thanks everybody for coming to this last minute setup. But this what I'm going to talk about is kind of basic, and then I'm going to for some of you are going to know how to do this blindfolded. Getting echo feedback. But anyway, what we'll do is talk about it a little bit, and then I can probably show you some examples of what's going on. There's some new players in town if you haven't done this in some time, and as far as where to get the records from, and I'm going to make it as specific as I can to Italian research because of the fact that that's our group here, but it can apply to other ethnicities as well in some ways. And remember this tree, not, you don't have to remember details of it. You can see my title page from my PowerPoint, correct? Okay. So kind of remember the tree. If you're not familiar, if you're not John, who's been doing this forever and has already published his book, and if you don't know anything about doing research for yourself, part of the result of what you do is a chart that looks a little bit like this one, but probably bigger. So anyway, let's okay, we got to see if there we go.
We have
Okay.
that Littori family. Isn't that the one that had 30 people in it that was featured at the World's Fair, Century of Progress?
No, that was well, okay, they're Latoria. That it's close, but it's the Latorias are actually from Carbonara, and they were called Latorre in that country, and they became Latoria here, and they had 20 children who all lived to adulthood. The youngest to pass away was 68 years of age, and I think there are 3 still living. But yeah, they got an award for having the biggest family in Chicago at the World's Fair. So if I had other relatives who knew you could get an award for that, they might have had even more kids, So
Well, that's small reward.
yeah, there's a yeah,
It's a
they're
trade-off.
actually when you go under the underpass in Franklin Park, their picture is one of the ones that's along those pictures that's in that section of
Oh, I didn't
Franklin
know
Park.
that.
Yep, they're in there, and yeah, I've not yet been able to wrangle an invitation to the annual reunion of that group. About 400 or 500 people show up, all descendants of Michael and Rosa Latoria. And of course, this year, I'm sure there won't be a get together, but that's going to be a heck of a Zoom meeting, 400 people, right? So we
Okay.
have a family Zoom meeting of like 20, and you can't hear anybody because everyone's talking over each other. Imagine that.
Yeah.
So anyway, very simple basics, and this is really to help people try to get started with their research. I think people get scared away by how much work it is. They get scared away by having to deal with the Italian language if they're not already familiar with it. And they think that if they want to do their research, they're going to have to write to Italy and pay money and wait for results. And I'm going to help dispel that rumor. You could do that if you want to, but there's no reason to make it difficult. Basically, step one of anybody doing research is to find your town of origin in Italy. And I'm just going to go through each of these three main points as little subscreens later on here. So you got to use the American records to track down where the town is. I know people who have been told by their relatives, "Oh, the family's from Bari." Okay, my Polish grandmother told my dad that they were from Krakow. Well, they were so far from Krakow, it's step one, get a map, so if people say they're from a big city, frequently it's that they don't know what little comune they're really from. But again, you don't have to you don't start your research by going to Italy and hoping that you can get records from the city offices or from the church. That's not how you start. That's how you, like I did. I worked for maybe I'd say 12 years, 13 years on the American records before I went over to Italy to work there on the church records. So I'll talk about that again in a little bit. And what you want to do, or what you want to get people to start doing if they're trying to get started, is to save their records. There are programs called genealogy software, and I'll talk about the one that I use and list a few others that are available. But the important thing as well is to in the era of if you have a computer, the hard drive will die. And it will not die on your terms. So anything that you acquire during your research, you want to make sure that you store it in a cloud and label it. And again, I'm going to talk about all this in more detail as we go through. Okay, now again, I'm sure that nobody in this particular group has any trouble with step one. Okay, some of you are directly from there maybe, and some are the children of people who are there from there. And when I started in about 1990, 91, I didn't have a clue about any of this. But to Kathy's point about getting people to start any of this in their youth, that's the time to start, because you have people of your grandparents' generation, hopefully still around, who can help you with information. I still am lucky enough to have a grandaunt who is 99. And her mind is sharp and clear. Unfortunately, she sometimes likes to embellish things to make her own points, and you have to take what she says with a lot of salt, not just a grain of it. So whatever you find out, you got to go find the truth somewhere else. Anyway, finding your town of origin. If anybody comes in and says, "I have no idea, but I know my family's from Italy or from wherever, but I don't know what town they're from," the first way to help them, see if you can find a passenger list. Those are on familysearch.org. We're going to talk about that probably at some length. They're also from the Ellis Island website. That's where they first were made public there. Death certificates here in the United States might have a birthplace on it, not always, with a town. Sometimes they just say Italy on them. Naturalization is great. The petition and the declaration of intention These are also available on Family Search. I'll talk about that a little bit. Some draft cards will have the town of origin in Europe in general, but Italy in particular. Some do not. Depends on the format of the draft card, but at least it's a it's a chance to get it. And some of the Chicago Italian parishes list the birth towns of people that are getting married in that parish here in Chicago, or who had kids and they're being baptized here in Chicago. So you might be able to track down a town of origin from there. Again, I'm going to talk about Family Search, Ancestry up to a point. Ancestry doesn't have a lot of Italian records, which are the main things that we want to be able to track down. They have some, but not a lot. Family Search has a bunch, and we'll talk about the Antenati website, the Archivo di Stato, a little bit later on. And a lot of people who start their research find out about census records. That's the first place I went to look back. I lived on the south side, so I was very close to the National Archives building on 73rd and Pulaski. Unfortunately, census records from back then do not list the town of origin, but at least you can tell if you've got anybody, if they're born in Italy or Illinois or somewhere else. Marriage licenses here don't even list the parents. From a town of origin standpoint, they're somewhat useless. But from other standpoints, they're wonderful. Okay. So now finding the records. Here's what people don't know who've not gone into genealogy at all, is the fact that the civil records of Italy have been microfilmed by our good friends at the LDS Church, the Mormons, and those records are available in different restrictions and forms, and I'll get onto that in a minute. So from typically around 1809, unless you're from Sicily, in which case they kind of start about 1820. And they can go as late as 1929, and there's actually a handful of post-1929 records that are making their way onto Family Search. So you can do a tremendous amount of your ancestry. The vast majority of humanity will not know who their relatives were who were born in the very beginning of the 19th century without going through the process of doing research. So you can impress your friends in a very quick way with not a lot of effort by having the records at your disposal. Most of the civil registrations, depending on their availability, and also to Kathy's point that she's got some northern and some southern ancestry, there are not a lot of records from the north microfilmed and available. The records actually were started in 1809 as a result of our good old friend Napoleon coming in and saying, I want records to be kept. Now the churches were keeping track, but rather than having to deal with them, they wanted to just keep their own set of records. And then luckily for us, in the South kept going. The North didn't always keep the records. They left it up to the churches to do the record keeping. Now, 1809 to 1900, the very same records are available on this rather long-winded website here, which has become known amongst the genealogy crowd as Antenati. But it's, as much as anything, these are meant to be the records of the Archivo di Stato for each of the different provinces. So we're going to talk about how to get to those records and what the restrictions are. The fact that there's two different sources, why would you use one source over the other when they're the same records? Well, the Family Search records are from the catalog of all the microfilms that have been made by the Mormons, the LDS Church. And not because of COVID, although COVID is now a problem, but some of these records, the contracts that they signed with the archives that they filmed them at were restricted, that you have to be physically in a family history center or in what they call an affiliate library. So there are public libraries that are linked to, they have an account with the Family Search to be able to give people access. There are some records that you cannot even look at except physically in Salt Lake City, Utah, but I don't think that's an issue for any of our Italian records. Okay. So at any rate, for example, a lot of the records from province of Bari, all the different towns around there, those records are on a restriction that I have to go to either an affiliate library or a family history center to use them, up till 1900. And then for some reason, 1901 to 1929, those are, I can do those from home in my bunny slippers, at 4 o'clock in the morning. So why, I don't know. There's no logic that I can perceive about it. But anyway, obviously because of COVID, family history centers are pretty much closed down. Affiliate libraries may or may not be open since the phase 4 or whatever restriction level that we're on now. And before that, phase 3, you can only sit in the library for an hour. Well, I can't even open up my internet tabs and get ready to start in an hour. Okay, so that's not very productive for me. If I don't get at least 18 hours of work done, I'm grouchy the whole next day. But anyway, so what's the difference with the Antenati? Now that website, and both of these are free, by the way, completely free. You just have to register on the Family Search, but you're not going to get literature. They're not going to try to convert you. None of that stuff. If you're not familiar with their group, you do have to log in order to get to anything. And so, not all records are restricted. Some are. It all depends on your town and what contract they agree to. Now, the Antenati site is completely free, and I don't think you even have to log into it, but the interface is not particularly good. And frankly, both of them do not have a lot of records for Italian records searchable by name. You can scroll through the records the way you would have scrolled through at an old family history center with a microfilm roll. You can scroll through the records on your screen, but you can't do it. Like I say, the Antenati website, the interface is not particularly good. It's hard to read the thumbnails to find out if you're on the right records or not, or to read every record in a file to get to where you're going. Now, quickly, I'm going to talk about church records to disappoint anybody who says, "Oh yeah, I want to get the records going back to 1550." That's all well and good, but the vast majority of the church records have not been microfilmed. When they were going through Italy to do the microfilming for LDS, it was during Pope Paul VI, and Pope Paul VI basically told the bishops and the priests in Italy, it's absolutely okay if you want to let the Mormons come in and film the records. However, and then he listed a bunch of possible repercussions that would happen if you did that. So he said it was okay, and then kind of said it was not, and everybody got the message and said, we're not going to do it. A handful of them did anyway. So unfortunately, they didn't go back and try to film the church records under the subsequent pontiffs. So there are very few church records. The vast majority, the only way really to get to church records, except for certain towns have them on there. I think some towns in Trento, church records have been filmed and are available on Family Search. And a few in Sicily, some areas in Sicily, and some areas in Basilicata in Potenza, but very, very few. So a few people have put together, I'm not among them. I actually only recently discovered ItalianParishRecords.org. And what that is a place that people who have gone to Italy and basically filmed their church records for themselves, as I did in 2003. They gave me a book and they locked me in the church and they went to a 3-hour lunch. So the camera came out and I took pictures. I took about 10,000 photographs in 3 hours. Before the phone, I had to do an actual camera and everything else. So I have records that need to go onto this site so they can be public so that people can use them. But there's very, very few towns in that as well. Somebody has to have done the research and have copies of the church records or an index to them or something in order for you to get back before that 1809. You know, anybody who researches Chicago knows that 1871 is the big stumbling block because of the good old fire. And in Italy, it's either 1820 for Sicily or 1809. That is the stumbling block of, okay, I've got it back to 1809. Now what do I do? And unfortunately, the answer is you got to go to Italy and get access to the church records. Not every priest will let you look at them. I did. I wrote an email and I wrote it in English, and I had somebody translate it for me because I'm not a speaker, and I wanted it exactly right. And I was able to send an email to the parish priest in my town as we were getting ready to come over to Trujano, and he told me to come and meet him there, and I met him there. And like I say, he just gave. I asked him what book, and I brought my charts with and everything else, and I was able to do a lot. But it took me about 2 years after I got home from Italy working with the records that I took pictures of. Yeah, that part of it's very, very limited. You're not going to get much done if you go over there unless you live there or you're going to be there for a long period of time. So let me talk real quick about, because I do want to show you these two main websites so you get an idea of what people are going to be asking for. But one thing a lot of people try to do when they start is they say, okay, I found my town, so I'm going to find every single DeNicolo in the town of Carbonara di Bari. Well, that's okay, but that's not a way to start out. You want to just go track back the ancestors as far back as you can, because otherwise you're going to end up swamped with all these names and they're not going to mean anything. Anybody who's researched for more than a couple of years has found out that the vast majority of the families over in Italy might have, I don't know, if both parents lived to be 40, they'd have at least 10, 12 kids, of whom maybe 7 of them, maybe 8 of them passed away in infancy because of medical care and so forth. So you end up with this flood of names. You get confused that you've got 5 people named Palmo Abenanti with the same parents, and it's because the first 4 of them died. And again, it's not the way you want to start. But you want to basically control what you're doing by creating an ancestor chart looking a little bit like what I had on my title page. And there are programs out there that are designed specifically for this purpose. Any of you that happen to be basketball fans, and I will not claim to be one of them, basically your family tree chart is going to look like the NCAA brackets, okay? And all pointing to one side. And so if somebody's coming in brand new to genealogy, give them that analogy of what it's going to look like. And, and then you need a blank one and fill it out. Okay, here's me. Here's mom and dad. I know that. Here's grandma and grandpa and grandma and grandpa. Okay, sometimes they got to find out their names. We're Italian. Grandma is nonna. Grandpa is pop, or papa. Sometimes, we don't even know the names growing up because that's not how we address them, right? So you need to find an actual record with the name sometimes, and beyond great grandparents, most people don't have that. So you want to put that into one of these programs. All I can say is I've been using Family Tree Maker for almost 3 decades. I mean, from DOS. Anybody remember DOS?
I do.
Yeah, I was going to say, I see a lot of heads nodding because I knew they would know it. They go back that far in computers. But people have once they get onto a program, they prefer that program because you don't want to keep flipping between different programs. The ones that I listed are kind of well thought of now. A lot of them have gone away. Personal Ancestral File is one that used to be given away free by the Mormons, and then they got rid of that. And now you use Family Search itself, part of your account. You can go in under Family Tree and create your tree in that website. And the advantage of that is that other people researching can search for your family names and bump into you and go, hey, you got the same great great grandparents I have. Let's trade information. Let's connect. Or the trees will connect together on family search. If I have, I have a tree with one set of families and somebody else ties into that, they can merge them together and it becomes one big tree shared by the multiple people. So family search is another way to do this. Now, while you're researching, and again, I'm going to show you where to get some of the documents that I'm talking about. I mean, I've got probably 30,000 pages of documentation in one form or another, and probably the same number of photographs. I've scanned all of mine, all my parents, and anything from the grandparents that we ended up with and other things. So I've got this monstrous collection of stuff. And if you can't find anything in it, that stuff doesn't mean a whole lot. Just taking a bunch of papers and throwing them in a box, and then later on you need to refer back to one of those pages, you're never going to find that paper. You need to organize what you have. And please, please, please get a scanner or go to a library if they'll let you, and scan your pictures, scan your documents. Everything should be as digital as possible. If you're in family search, you can download, and it'll digitally download a copy of the record that you are on while you're in there, if it'll let you do that. Sometimes the restriction is you can look at the record, but you can't download it. So at that point, you break out Mr. Phone Camera and you take a picture of your screen. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I'm not supposed to tell you to do that, but that's how you do that. At any rate, do as I say, not as I do. I have not been very good about tagging the image, the JPEG images that I have. But JPEG has tags on the file itself, and so I've tried to go through all of my photographs and actually tag the way you would tag in Facebook. But it's not graphical. You just have to go in and say, okay, here's the picture. Here's me, mom, dad, and grandma. Okay, so I put all their names in as tags. When I tag people, I use their maiden name. Now, that's kind of natural for us who do Italian research. But the reason I do that is for people like my grandaunt, not the 99-year-old, a different grandaunt who married 3 times. So what name do I put for her? She had 4 different names in this life, almost 5. She was getting set for her 4th marriage when she passed away at 89 years old. We're going to call her Elizabeth Taylor, would have been a way to put it. But, at any rate, tag your photos. An unfortunate reason to tag them, but actually a valid one, is that when people contact you and say, hey, do you have any pictures of so-and-so who just passed away? You'll be able to do a Windows search. I can't speak for Apple computer products, but you'll be able to do a search for all of the photos that have a particular name tagged in them, and you'll instantaneously have all of the pictures you need for a slideshow, hopefully for a happy occasion, but frequently for somebody passing away. And please, please, please put all of your photos and documents in some kind of a cloud folder so that they're backed up automatically and protected. Like I say, you can do what you want. If you want to put stuff as just papers and put your papers in a file folder, that's going to do fine until there's a fire. And I've had multiple family members who had fires they were kind of the clearinghouse for all the photos, and those photos all burnt, and they didn't know enough to digitize back in those days, or they couldn't digitize. So unfortunately, a lot of stuff was lost that we really can use. So don't let that be you. I know if your house burns down, your high priority is not going to necessarily be the photos, but you know what? You'll know that the photos and the documents and all the work you've done are in a cloud. And again, the computer could just crash. If the hard drive decides to die, and it will, you could lose your work, but if it's on the cloud, you can retrieve it with no sweat whatsoever. Now, after you get some research done and you want to get that research out to other people. This could be somebody else who's researching that line. This just could be a relative. Um, I don't know about you, but I get a lot of phone calls from cousins that I haven't heard from in years. And suddenly they're interested in my health and my well-being. And then the question comes out. My son or my daughter or my grandkid is doing a family tree project for school. Oh, now you know my number and my name. Okay, So I end up either printing something out. That's fine. Look, I want everybody in my family to get straight A's, and if this is what it takes, they can have their straight A's. But I don't give them, because of how big my family tree charts are. I certainly don't give them everything. If they turn in a chart with 17 generations on it on a scroll, the teacher's going to know the kid really didn't do that work. So it's like, yeah, let's do 4 generations, maybe 5. And the family tree software will be able to print charts that look a little bit like the one I have. They'll print a whole bunch of different charts. Descendant charts, you start from the great grandparents and it will spread out to all their kids, then all their grandkids, great grandkids, etc. We have 5 living generations in the family right now. And my great aunt's oldest great grandson is 19 and has a girlfriend. So we're like, uh-oh, here we go. Could have a 6th generation if things aren't careful. But anyway, most of these programs will, if probably all of them, will be able to create a PDF file of a chart. And actually it'll create a PDF file that will allow you to cut and paste the chart together from multiple sheets of paper, because it'll very quickly get to be too big to give on a single sheet of paper. Then it'll be, the font will get so small that it'll be impossible to read. So the way I usually do things is I give people a PDF file, and if they want to waste their printer paper and ink, let them do it. At least that's a small price to pay. I try to use the opportunity to make sure I get updates from these families, because I don't want to, I don't mind giving away the milk for free, as they say. But now, and one other part about sharing the family history, the skeletons in the closet. Every family's got some. It might just be a premature, birth. Somebody got married 3 months before their first kid was born, or it could go all the way to issues with law enforcement or anything. It doesn't matter where you're from. Everybody's got something going on. I learned the hard way with a couple of different relatives in different branches of the family when I was asking questions about things that I discovered. And the newspaper archives for the Tribune are really great places to find some of this stuff out. Unfortunately, when people think that a skeleton is safely buried away, and then here comes the genealogist going, hey, what about that guy that was shot by a cop when he was running away after stealing a car in 1933? I thought it'd be safe to bring that up with his sister. Turns out she not only cut me off, she threw me out of her house. This is a long time ago. I learned my lesson, and I passed the word on to everybody I know. Just be very careful when you find out neat stuff that makes the family tree more interesting than just a bunch of names and dates or the family history. It's all well and good to record that information, but spreading it around, posting it on Facebook, telling everybody could have repercussions that might cause some problems there are people that have information and photos, and there are people that need information and photos. If you're the one who's that needs it, you don't want to burn your bridge. It's not worth it. Just to make that point about, oh yeah, I found that news story about your brother, and so just I got to mention that to anybody who's talking about family history. And if you are working with anybody who's brand new, who is going to find out something kind of juicy about their own family, okay, you find it, you record it, but don't publicize it. It's not going to help too much. I'm going to stop that share and I'm going to go into, if I can find my web page. Oh, where are we? I've got a lot of pages open. I guess I got to open up another one, huh?
So family search is the gold standard in most of this.
Yes, yeah. Family search is. Says I'm having an issue sharing. I'm trying to share another open window for the internet, and it doesn't want to. It's not wanting me to do this here. Let me go to advanced. No. All right, give me 1 second here so I can try to snag this because this is becoming. Oh, there we. This might help. Share. Okay.
Okay, it says you've started.
Yeah, it's my Zoom screen. I know. Well, let me just open up another tab. And okay, family search. Okay. All right. So I have to sign in or it's not going to let me do very much. If you're working at home, you can keep it signed in for 2 weeks like this. But if you're working at a public library, please don't do that. Again, there's no money changing hands in any form on family search. So but still, then somebody else is going to log in and maybe it won't let you in. So I'm going to talk about searching. So we have search and we have a lot of items here. We're going to talk about search records first. And I'm going to search for my great grandaunt, the 99-year-old, told me that she was one of 10 children and I can only find 9. And when Family Search came out, I was able to do a search and I found the 10th child and the name was spelled so horrifically wrong on the original document. You're gonna find when you're working on your Italian research in Italy that it's more accurate, but you get occasional modest name changes. Like somebody will be born Maria Carmela Abenanti and they'll die Maria Abenanti or vice versa. You're going to get that kind of problem. But when you get into the Chicago records for our non-English speaking Italian born ancestors, and they're going to the city hall and trying to give people the name of somebody, you get some names that are spelled so horrifically wrong that it's stunning. And that's part of the challenge of this is to be able to figure out that that's the right name or it's not. When you do a search, it's going to presume that you're searching the entire world. And we're going to do that just so we can see what the kind of results we get. There's a checkbox here that says match last names exactly. If you check that box, then you will only get Abenanti spelled with this name, with this exact spelling. It will not do anything else. So I typically never check that box. You can do asterisk if you leave the box unchecked. So this will bring you Palmo, okay? Or you can leave it blank and it'll find anybody. You actually don't even have to put a last name if you don't want to. This will search without even a last name, but of course you might get a lot of results. So you can limit your searches on this site. I could say birthplace and I could put in Bari, or I could put in Chicago, or I could leave it blank. And I could put in a range of years. Unfortunately, it does not let us do a exact date search, which would be helpful if you can't find somebody's birth record. You'd be able to do that. I could search for Paul Abenanti, whose spouse's name is Julia, or whose spouse's last name is Franco, whatever. Or I can do that. Okay, you can do any the kind of thing like that you want, but you'll get the results. You'll get the best hits, and then hits that are not so good below it. So you still might get 147,000 results on one of these searches, but your top results will be near the top. If anybody is using this program, using a parent search, father, first name, father, last name, mother, first name, mother, last name is one of the sweetest things that they added in here. If the parents are on the record, I'll tell you what I do. Forgetting Paul Abenanti, I would leave the name blank and I would do this. You see what I've done here? Now actually, I'm going to show you the results of that just for fun. Now that doesn't look like much. I didn't put I only put a first letter of their names, but only people who are the children of people whose name starts with P, A, and S are going to come up in my search result. It's a
in the
neat
whole
way.
world.
In the whole world, if I choose to limit birthplace, I can certainly do that. Let's hit search and see what happens. Now it might give me, maybe I'm going to get a bunch of people from Ireland. Maybe it'll give me a bunch of people from Buenos Aires residents. So it's a Buenos Aires census. So yeah, you get too much. I call it the Bob Barker method, higher, lower. If you get too many results, yeah, it's at 38,000 results for PAAS. What I'm going to do is I'm going to limit it to Illinois because I'm looking for Chicago children of this family. Now I get other families. Okay, I'm down to 181. That's not bad, but I get other people. Now just to go through quickly what we're seeing here to give you an idea. They have indexed the Cook County births, Cook County marriages, and Cook County deaths on this website. Cook County itself not only doesn't have an index, they've actually taken the website down, even though ordering by online is completely safe during the COVID period, but I guess they don't have anybody there to pull the records. So what you get here, sure would like to find, Mary Allegro looks good. It's from Chicago Heights. Paul Allegro and Anna Sutera. So we got twins. We've got Mary Allegro and Josephine Allegro, theoretically. Now, the index does not point directly to the records because Cook County doesn't want them to do that. So unfortunately, what they've done is they put the index up here, and then they put the records themselves you have to find through the catalog. It's kind of backhanded, and if anybody wants information on how to do that, I can send Dominic a handout on how to do it because it'll take like 2 hours to explain that. But it's a way. Now, if you click on a record, any part of the record, this is the kind of thing that comes up, which gives us enough detail. So the good news is you have the parents, you have the name, you have the date, you have the location. And so this will help you know, I am really sure that this is the right person or this is not the right person. So you see all this information they have up here. It's a type, it's a birth, the date. It took place in Chicago Heights because I said Illinois, so it didn't limit it. Registration dates when they filled out the birth certificate. You will find some of these go much later for people who didn't have a birth certificate filed by our midwife that handled the birth of the relative. They didn't have time. They had to rush off to another birth. So it's a female, white, Paul Allegro, CPA, and AS is what I searched for, and that's what came up here. He's born in Italy, no town. You won't get that here. Father's age is 30, so he's born about 1900-ish, and so forth. And the certificate number they give you, anytime you're in this screen, you want to write out this folder number, 1004-51425. That's the equivalent of the microfilm number that we used to use with old microfilm at the Family History Center. You want to record that number and get the image number 0008. So it's just 8. So what's going to happen is that we go into the catalog to find this film number. And when we find it, we go directly to image number 8, and it will give us the actual birth record for Mary Allegro. Okay. Again, there's just not enough time to go through too much detail about it. But here's why I search for parents. Because here's the family I'm looking for. Here's my 99-year-old grandaunt. Father Palmo Abenanti is spelled absolutely correctly. Her mother, Anna Santuli. Okay. Santoliquido is the correct spelling of the name. But when they're in Italy, they just say Santuli. My grandaunt still uses that name when referring to her relatives, her cousins in Italy that still have that name. So when they reported it, she said Santuli, and that's what got put on the record. And here, Sanduli with a D. So I can guarantee you that if I typed Santoliquido in that search, you'd never find either of these records. So let's say Carl. Carl is that 10th kid that my grandaunt couldn't. She told me his name was Nick. Turns out it was Carl. Close. Okay, so when you see a film number, you write it down. Folder number, you write that down, and the image number. Either one of these is going to get you to what you need, and then the image number takes you directly to how to find that certificate. So you don't have to pay Cook County for it. You just get it from here. Not everything's out there, but a lot of it is. And like I say, I'll just throw the handout to Dominic, and maybe he can forward it so that you guys can try this method out if you're looking for somebody's certificate yourself, or you need to show somebody how to do it. The other Antenati, let's see. Google Antenati. If there's any questions, shout them out, because I know we don't have too much time. There's no way to cover all this in an hour. Yeah, mine directly ties in with the Archivo di Stato di Bari, because that's what that's what I'm working on. So coming in from home, you have to pick out what province you want to work in. And then you're going to get 3 of these that matter. Okay. I'm going to show you what they come up with. So Napoleonico. And one thing about this site is it's a little slow because it's coming from, of course, Italy. So all these are the towns. There's good old Carbonara. And there are more towns. You can change the site over to be in English, but it always seems to change back to Italian. But you'll find enough if you are not linguistically gifted that way. I can read a record blindfolded, but I can't speak the language. When I was in Italy, we just played charades for the entire 2 weeks I was there. You know, I need a drink. So you click on a town, and what you see now are the types of records that are available for that town. One very important thing to keep in mind is that in the family search records are a special group of records called the allegati. And the allegati are supporting documents for the marriages. So when a couple got married there, the allegati file would be created, and it would list the marriage bans when you would do here, 3 weeks of announcing the marriage to give somebody a chance to say, I don't want them to get married. And then then it would also have the birth records, an extract of the birth records of the bride and the groom. And it would also maybe have a death record of a previous spouse, if somebody was widowed who's part of this marriage. And it may also have the death record of a parent, so that, because they're talking about dealing with the dowry and so forth. Those records do not seem to be in the Antenati website, but they do seem to be in Family Search. Atti Diversi, if you're not familiar with those are birth records of children who don't, they're left on either the doorstep of the church or of the city hall, basically foundlings. One of my ancestors, 5 generations back, is a foundling, so his birth is in the atti diversi. He won't be in the regular births at that time frame. But you get birth records. Indexes to birth records are sometimes separately in here. Marriages, of course, marriage index, death records. You notice you don't see any military, won't be in there, no church records. But now Napoleonico is only cover. You see the years when he was running things. So that's why those are called that. So it only covers for a few years if they're there. So what do I do to get past 1815? We got to go back to our Archivo di Stato. So you see where I clicked. And now the restoration. So this is pre Garibaldi and the Risorgimento. So now back to Carbonara. Now we see a little bit different. We've got diversity. We've got marriages. I'll go to birth so you can see. Okay, so we start, you have 1816, and it goes down to about 1860. That's about how they handle it there. Okay. And then what do I do to get past 1860? Well, we want to do this one right here. Why 1860 is the official dividing line, I'm not really sure. But anyway, again, going to the same town. Now we have a few other things here. Actually, okay, matrimoni allegati actually are in here. Let's see what years are covered. That would be neat. Okay, a lot of years are missing, which is typical of the allegati records. These are files that are just scattered around people's offices, not always in the best condition, but when you can find them, they're tremendous. Annotazioni di morti. Sometimes these are death records that occurred well after the 1929 limit. So the birth records, like we were looking at a minute ago, go all the way up to 1900, and then they stop. I don't know why they stop at 1900, but as an example, so you're gonna search the 1871 births. Now you see these thumbnails, not exactly easy to work with. Eventually you learn that if it looks a little bit like this in a bunch of lines, that's an index. And so you click on that to zoom in on the index so you can try to actually read what's going on. I'm old and my eyesight is poor and I don't read this particularly well. But so you can actually click on it, it'll zoom in a little bit closer, but it's got to load the image. So it's a little bit bigger, and you got a plus sign here to zoom in. So, and then you get to deal with handwriting. I think the people that wrote the records for our Italian towns were used to be the carpenter, and after losing a couple of fingers to their carpentry, they became the handwriting experts. It's not pleasant. Let me try to move this over just so you can see what it's like. It's 2 different columns. So up here at the top, last name, Abbondanti Nicola Di Francesco. That's all you get in the index, and you're lucky to get that. Okay, now if you don't know Nicola's father, then you've got to look for every Nicola in the year. Here's Nicola Antonio Abbondanti di Oronzo. Okay, so you got a different father. So at least if you know who you're looking for, you can rule out people. But if I know I'm looking for this guy, then it's record number 75. So I have to flip through those pages to get to the 75th record. And there might be 1, 2, 3 3 records on a page. And here's a familiar name over here. This is from 1871, but they're going to be in there.
Yeah, DeNicolo.
Yeah. Yep. So it's I'll close this out because we're done with our hour and I'm just getting started. But basically, yeah, the records themselves obviously are going to be in Italian. When you do church records, those are obviously going to be in Latin, even here, for the most part, unless they're in nice columns. But over in Italy, church records are written in longhand with abbreviations. They're lots of fun. But these records are basically have a format, and from 1875 to 1929, it's the same format. And I could also send a handout of that to Dominic to pass out to anybody who's not familiar with how these records work. But here's a tip for anybody who's starting their Italian research and they're looking at an Italian record. At the top of the record, it almost always says on the 5th of June, 1871. And everybody writes down June 5th, 1871 as somebody's birth date, death date. It turns out that that's the date that somebody went to see the mayor about it. And in the middle of the record is where they hide the little piece of information that says this is the actual record, the actual date of the event is buried in the middle here. And sometimes it just says oggi, it just says today, it just says ieri, so it's yesterday, or it says the 5th of June, even though the record is the 5th of June. You have to look in the middle of the record. So anytime you're reading the records, John can obviously attest to this. I'm sure many of you can. The date is buried in the midst of the record, except for the marriages.
Bottom line, Dan, is Family Search is really up to date and pretty easy to use, huh?
Family, yeah. The trick of Family Search is that when you, I just want to show this really quick so you see the catalog when you look for something. For an Italian record, you do a search of the catalog, and again, anybody who's searching, you go to the place, you type in the name, and it puts up. As you can see, there's multiple carbonaras scattered around, so you have to know where you're looking. And so now it will look in the catalog. What I want to show you. See, now because carbonara has been absorbed by Bari, it's in the catalog under Bari, but eventually it does show. Now, on the right-hand side of this screen, it says format, and it's got a little icon. That is supposed to be a camera with a tiny little key above it.
Yeah.
What does that mean? That means that these are films that you cannot look at in your home. But if you're in a family history center, it will just be a camera without the key. Okay, and also an affiliate library, family history center or an affiliate library. Right now, probably affiliate library is the only one you can get into thanks to COVID. But that will be, see, if I try to go in, see, it says this film is viewable with additional restrictions. And I just want to see what happens. Okay, it's going to load up. What it does is it loads up an image viewer, and this is going to give you this error message. Okay, it says you can only access the site at a family history center or using an affiliate library. So you get this page full of garbage. Okay, that's absolutely normal. Don't think that the website's down or whatever. But that, because of the key, what they've done is that within the networks at the family history centers and the affiliate libraries, that network has access where that will change that icon from the key to the one without the key. And at that point, you can do anything, even with your own computer. You can bring your own computer to one of these locations, and as long as you're on their Wi-Fi, you'll be able to get to it from your own computer rather than having to use one of theirs. So you see every film for carbonara from 1809 to 1900, and you can see on the left the types of records. They have a range of years for each one of them. Processetti is the same as Allegati, but they only called them those for a few years. So, but it would then normally give you a bunch of thumbnails within that other screen that I just showed you. And that screen will then, you'll see the thumbnail and you'll be able to click on the thumbnail and it'll zoom in. And at that point, you might be able to, I don't have an example of one that is unrestricted. I'm going to, if there's any
Dan,
questions.
Dan,
Yeah.
if you go to Sasano, the Sasano records are available.
Okay. SSANO.
SASSANO.
Okay. Uh, okay, come on. There's civil registration. Okay. So yeah, they got two different groupings. It probably depends where they took the pictures. Okay, so see here, it doesn't have the key. Thank you for that example. So I'm going to go into one of these. Now, each of these might have several thousand images on them. See here, there's 3,000 images. So obviously, if the records have been are made searchable, this is so much easier. You just click on the search result and it'll take you right to the image. But very few of them are like that. I'm going to skip to 1500 because I want to get to one that actually has those long-handed records are kind of a pain. So as you're in here, one of these records will have a little yellow boundary around it. Doesn't matter which one I pick here. So it tells you the type of record at the top. You got to zoom in, and it does zoom in quite well. So here's your date at the top. That isn't really your date. It just helps you. So on 1889, on the 5th of September, and then it says what time they went to the mayor's office. Down here in the middle, it says del di quattro di corrente mese, the 4th of the current month. So on the 5th, they went to tell the mayor that on the 4th, this person was born. And the sweet part about this birth record is that it has their marriage from 1910 annotated in the margin. So this is exactly the kind of record that would be available as well on Antenati. But here, and again, I just clicked on a record at random. The trick for you and for anybody researching is to actually find the right record. Many of these are just not indexed at all. The Cook County stuff is much better indexed.
I can add to it. There's 3 of us that indexed every Sasano record and have it on a Google page. So if you know anybody from Sasano, just go to the indexes and it'll help you find who you're looking for.
Right. There are a handful of such pages that Termini Maresi, I know they made a website. I think it's maybe a pay site, but they basically indexed the entire town, which was pretty a major deal. And but that helped with a lot of records because my granduncle's family is from there. He's not in my bloodline. But anyway, the off to the right, okay, if I wanted to print the page that this is on, and I keep zooming in, so I'll zoom it back out. You see there's 3 records on this page. The birth records may typically have 3. Here's number 95. See that number from the index we found? That's what this number is referencing. So if I was in that 1871, I would find record 75. That would be my record. So here there's 3. Death records, typically there's 4 to a page. So I would hit download, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it downloads and it just saves the name as record image number 6, because I've evidently got 5 of them in my download folder. All I can say is that when you get done with all the work you do, you're going to have record image 20, record image 97, and you're not going to be able to find anything until you go in and rename that to reflect whose record it is. So do that when you get home from your library, because you're not going to remember who you were working on 6 months later, because that's how I do it, and it's a bad idea. You want to do it the right way. Another item is that if the record is already askew, you can go left and what's the old joke? Two wrongs don't make a right, but three rights make a left. Well, three lefts make a four lefts make a same image. You can also, if sometimes your Cook County certificates are going to look like this. So you just, when you're on those, you just do tools, invert, and it will do it like this. And like I say, you can just print it directly if that's how you want to do it. This topic, the family search by itself it needs 3 hours. But this is just a very bare bones of getting kind of started. There's all kinds of great things in there. The family tree I talked about is here. They got images that are just new things they haven't even cataloged yet. It's kind of like the top floor of the cultural center. If there was a box up there that nobody had gone through, that's what this is there. We're going to look at this and figure out what it is and then catalog it properly someday, you know. And then they've got some wiki material within here that explains how to do research for people that are really just getting started. And there's some videos on there by someone named Ruth Lapioli Merriman, who is tremendously knowledgeable. She's retired now. She's a very knowledgeable Italian genealogist who used to work in Salt Lake City at the library.
Okay, John, 2 minutes to add some things that are important to you on this.
I don't know about adding much to it. Dan's covered quite a bit. Just, you know, that's something that I and a few other guys have worked on the past couple of years, was indexing those files. We also got church records from that Sassano town, and we indexed those. It's good to get a group together if you can, who are passionate enough and just work together to you know, accomplish the goals, and then hopefully put the stuff out there on a Google Sheets or something, so other people can access that information as well. I've been doing this for about 25 years. My big breakthrough was in 2018 when I finally saw the records online and met up with Peter Barbella of in Massachusetts, and we've been working together. Actually, we're putting a Sassano tree together of all the records that we have indexed. So outside of the research, like I said, Dan has covered everything that I know.
Okay, quick question.
I appreciated your talk about this family search.
Mhm.
And I was just going to say that if you need any contact person in Italy, beyond all this online research, you can ask me for whatever I could do for you.
Well, that's very
that's wonderful.
very thoughtful and nice. I know you're over there.
Yeah.
That's
I
my big-
also, excuse me, asked you a question about school records. I know that analphabetismo, illiteracy, was a problem in early immigration, but would that be also a field of research?
I have not seen any kind of school records, not even here. You would think that it wouldn't matter. You know, somebody's report card or somebody's school records from, you know, even in the neighborhoods here in Chicago for the, you know, immigrant families. But no, I've never seen school records. I know that there are military records that are typically only available over there. Paula Manfredi is the one genealogist who seems to focus on that topic and those kind of records. But I haven't been to a big national conference in a while to see her. She's based sometimes in Salt Lake and sometimes in Italy. But I have not seen anything on school records to answer your question.
Thank you all the same. Thank you,
It
Dan.
would be, yeah, it should be nice. You know, that's, to me, you know, that who, you know, I have 5 ethnicities. Italy's only one of them. But you know, my biggest point of pride is to be able to point back and say, look, that there were 16 generations of peasant farmers who probably intellectually did very little because they didn't have time. And within 1 or 2 generations here in the United States, they were able to do amazing things. That to me, just the opportunity that I might not have gotten if our family had stayed over there. I mean, who knows? Things may be different these days, but back in 1900, you didn't have a lot of options, and it's important to kind of make that distinction. And when you're, the kids walking around with their computers and cell phones, it's like, back in my day, it's already back in my day for me, much less for my 99-year-old grand aunt or anybody else.
Okay, another question from someone?
I had a question, Dan.
Mhm.
I wondered how you started all this research. And I know that some friends of mine have started research like this because they wanted to get an Italian passport. They wanted to get a dual passport because they were interested in buying property. And
Mhm.
they didn't have a clue as to where to start. And so they started by, they contacted some lawyers in Italy, and it became very, very expensive. And when I'm looking at this and seeing that the website that you used had free information, I thought, oh my goodness, wouldn't that have been a money saver, a time saver, and been just this left a very sour taste in their mouth. And I think this would have been such a sweet way for them to find out about their heritage. Thank you, Dan.
Well,
Thanks for the presentation. I got your email and I will
good.
contact you.
Great,
Yes.
great. To answer your question, you notice I didn't spend a dime during this presentation. That's the key to it for me. Well, my tree, I did as much of my ancestry as I possibly could, and then I did as many of the descendants of those ancestors as I possibly could. If I had not made that decision, I probably would be done, and I would have moved on to other things in life. Instead, I've spent 30 years and I've pulled about 88,000 relatives. But to get to how did I start? I didn't start with lawyers and expensive things, but I had no idea how to start. At the time I started, there was an organization called Pointers pursuing our Italian names together. Point was the acronym. And there was a group of about 45, 50 people who would get together for an Italian dinner down on a restaurant on the south side, and then there'd be a meeting and we'd all talk about our Italian genealogy problems and resources that, hey, this might be useful to you. This is all before there was a family search or any of that. So that is kind of how I got started. That's how I found out what a family history center was. I did not know that going in. And all I was doing, the reason I started, frankly, is because I'm an only child, and all of my relatives knew who I was when we'd go to a wake or a wedding, and they give me a big, huge kiss on the face, and I wouldn't know who they were. And it's like, you're bothering me. What are you kissing me for? And they all knew my name, and I'm like, hey, you. It was really awkward. And I just said, I'm an adult now, and I'm not talking about when I'm a teenager, and I'm an adult already. I'm going, okay, I've had enough of looking like a fool or feeling like a fool because I don't know who these people are. I'm going to figure that out. I figured it out, but that's how we're talking 30 years ago now. And because I did this just as I was losing my grandparents, I didn't get to talk to them, but I at least got to talk with their siblings, and that's what got the ball rolling forward. And now I can't stop it.
Okay. Anything else that's pressing with the group? I want to remind you that next week we're having Mary Maturi Gibson. Mary, you want to give a preview of the interlocutory?
my third book, which has been out on the market about 6 months, and I heard from a bookseller in London that says it's selling very well over there. So that's kind of interesting. So I plan to talk about how I came to write my books, and a little bit about my parents who came from Italy. And they were quite old. They're gone now, but just a little synopsis of, and in the first two books, the first one's about my life growing up, the second one's about my long career as a nurse, and then the third one is about my life winding down and heading for retirement, and my trip back to Italy to discover why I cared so much about the things I cared about. So,
okay, I think a lot of us can identify with that.
Pardon?
A lot of us can identify with that. Going back to Italy.
Yes.
Back, I say. I never started off there, but when I went there, I went back to Italy. Okay. Well, tune in next week. Thanks very much, Dan. That really got me excited to go on to the Antenati and to the family search and research my family. And so long, everyone, and thanks.
Arrivederci, Professore Candeloro.
Ciao, ciao.
Arrivederci.